Hi friends, my name is Gloria and welcome back to another video. As you can already tell by the title, in today's video I'm going to be talking about some authors that I would love to read from next year. These are new to me authors, but not necessarily debut or new authors, just authors that I have on my TBR, books of theirs that I have on my TBR that I would love to get to. But I'm just going to be going through a list today. It's a little bit of a long list of new to me authors and books that I would love to pick up in the next year. So essentially this is sort of a start to a somewhat of a 2022 TBR. These are not necessarily like must-read top of the list books for me, but they are just books that have been on my radar that I would love to get to. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. I've roughly divided these by genre because I feel like that just makes sense in my mind. So the first genre is going to be mystery thrillers. Now, before I'd probably consider myself a little bit more of a mystery thriller reader, I've definitely scaled it back this year, and I'm realizing that I'm particular about my mystery thrillers and I don't pick them up too often, but I do enjoy them occasionally. So in this list I have about 4 mystery thriller authors that I would love to just give a try, you know, see how I feel. The first author is Riley Sager. I know he's quite a beloved author. He always has a book coming out, I feel like every year. A lot of the popular booktubers always feature him in their book clubs. Now, I've heard love and hate about several of his books, so I don't really know which one is considered his best one. So if you are a fan of his and read one of his books, please let me know down below which one I should pick up. Just looking at his list though, the top rated one with 4.08 Goodreads rating is Home Before Dark, and then his lowest one is Survive the Night, which is actually his newest one with 3.54 average rating. Just looking at synopsis alone, Survive the Night would be the one that I'd be the most curious about. It's the most similar sounding to No Exit by Taylor Adams, which is one of my favorite thrillers last year. It was a very great book. It sounds very exciting, but I've literally only heard people say bad things about it. So I don't want to pick up a Riley Sager book and be disappointed, even though I still could be, but I want to give him the best chance of impressing me. However, Home Before Dark, with the highest rating, is the least likely book that I'd enjoy because I could care less about haunted houses, paranormal, ghost stuff, and I think this is a haunted house story, so I'm not really interested in that. So I'm thinking Final Girls. I'm thinking that one is a safe, non-paranormal zone, and I feel like a lot of people like that one. The Last Time I Lied is the second highest rated book, so maybe I should pick that one up. Either way, I'd love to try one of his books in 2022 to see how I feel about him. The next very popular mystery thriller author is Ruth Ware. Now, she has a ton of really popular books: Death of Mrs. Westaway, Woman in Cabin 10, Lying Game, The Turn of the Key. I have quite low expectations. I do not think that I'm gonna like her as an author, but I do want to give one of her books a try. This is the one I own, One by One, her also most newest release, I believe. It came out last year. It's also quite wintry, so maybe I'll pick this one up soon, but no promises. Either way, I'd love to try one of her books. I do have low expectations though. I've not heard anyone love this book, and then her as an author, I feel like I've only heard mixed things. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it, but I want to give it a try anyways. Another author I'd love to try is B.A. Paris, and Behind Closed Doors is my top book, the one that's on my TBR of hers that I'd love to try. She also has a few other ones. I think there's like The Therapist that sounds kind of interesting. I've heard good things about this one. And then the final mystery thriller author that I would love to pick up one of their books in 2022 is John Mars. I've heard a lot of love for the book The One, especially listening to the audiobook. This is like some date connection, dating app, serial killer thing, which could be interesting, but I'm a little bit skeptical. I've also heard good things about Passengers, so I'm intrigued to see how one of his books goes. I do love a really good, fast-paced, intense, suspenseful novel. I think his books promise to be that, so would love to give one of his a try to see. Now, moving on to the one science fiction author that I would love to try in 2022, and that is Octavia E. Butler, and the book I own is Parable of the Sower. I've also heard incredible things about Kindred, so I would love to try one of those 2 books of hers. Now, I just barely dipped my toe into sci-fi fantasy. I'm not a big sci-fi fantasy reader, but I've heard really good things about Octavia E. Butler's writing because she seems to be genre bending, where this one is a bit of a post-apocalyptic dystopian view on the world. And then Kindred is historical fiction with a little bit of like time travel in it, so I feel like that could also be a really good reading experience. I feel like it's just the right amount of sci-fi fantasy for me to be an enjoyable reading experience, and that it won't be like over my head and too much for me. So I have high hopes. Now, moving on to classics. I still can't believe I have not read a Jane Austen book. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. Pride and Prejudice is my all-time favorite movie, the 2005 Keira Knightley version. Absolutely love it. I've also pretty much watched all of the other kind of like Jane Austen adaptations, so I'm familiar with the story. So Pride and Prejudice is probably the one that I need to pick up, but I do own her other books, and since I own them, I should probably get to them. I recently hauled Emma by Jane Austen. I found this one for 50 cents at my library, so would love to read Emma, and I love the newest movie adaptation. It's fantastic. And then I randomly have two versions of Mansfield Park, this like Barnes & Noble Classics edition, and then this little old Penguin edition, but it's really cute. I found in a little free library. Mansfield Park or Emma or Pride and Prejudice. I need to just do it. I need to read at least one of her books in 2022. I would ideally love to read all of her works, but that's another goal for another time. And then the other classic author that I would love to read from is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I have never read the Sherlock Holmes books. I've watched the BBC adaptation with Benedict Cumberbatch, which is excellent. I've watched the other Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies, and they were great. I think I would thoroughly enjoy his writings, and so I really hope to pick one of his books up in 2022. Now, moving on into contemporary. I don't read a lot of contemporary, and I have three authors that are sort of also genre bending, where some of their works are considered just general fiction, literary fiction, or contemporary, and then some of their works are historical fiction, and some of them even write some nonfiction as well. So quite the range. The first author in this category that I would love to try is Lisa Genova. Now, she's probably most known for her book Still Alice, which is all about Alzheimer's, but I do own this book Inside the O'Briens, which is all about Huntington's disease. She also recently came out with Remember, which is a nonfiction book on memory. This is the one I own, so I'd probably pick this one up, or Still Alice, maybe listen to the audiobook of that one because I've heard that's good. So that's the plan. The other author that also kind of fits this vibe is Anne Patchett, and I have her book Commonwealth as well as State of Wonder. This one, I love the cover. It's very simple but very sweet. I think this is just like a family drama and just centers around like family dysfunction and all that kind of stuff, which I haven't read enough family drama books to really have formed a strong opinion of whether I like it or not. My theory is that I don't think I like it. I don't think I like the drama. I don't think I care about family dysfunction and just mess, but I still want to give it a try. I might be pleasantly surprised. This other book, State of Wonder, actually kind of funny story. I just watched The Jungle Cruise with my husband, the new The Rock and Emily Blunt Disney movie, which was the cheesiest movie I probably have ever seen in my life. It was a little rough. There was some funny parts that made me giggle, but overall it was not a good movie. But after reading the premise of this book, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what The Jungle Cruise is. This is about a woman who goes into the Amazon to find a like new life-saving drug, and her like crazy escapades in the Amazon rainforest, which is kind of The Jungle Cruise. It's about a woman who wants to go find this like new magical tree to like save people. So that's just like a total random connection and random story, but would love to try one of Anne Patchett's books. Let me know if you've read any of her work. Which one would you recommend? And then the last author that I would love to try that fits this contemporary vibe is Jodi Picoult. The number one book that's on my list is The Storyteller. This was very praised and hyped by some ladies that I follow, The Curly Reader and Books and Jams, and Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library. They all really love this author, and particularly this book. I believe it's about a man who was like a top Nazi commander and like killed a lot of Jews. So he writes this woman a letter saying, hey, can you kill me because I can't like live with the guilt and shame of what I did. I don't know what happens, but it sounds very interesting. Would love to just try this author out to see how I feel and how I connect with her writing. Okay, let's move on to my favorite genre, historical fiction. There's a lot of historical fiction authors that I would love to get to in 2022. So here we go. The first one is Hilary Mantel. This is a book about Henry VIII. It's set in the 1500s and has to do with like the Tudor dynasty and the royalty of England. I have not read really anything in like that Tudor period or in like medieval England. Would love to give this book a try. Speaking of the Tudor time period, I would love to pick up a Philippa Gregory book. If you've read from her and enjoyed any of her books, please let me know which one to start with. I know that the other Boleyn girl is probably most popular one, or the one that I've heard the most about. I'm just very curious to see how I connect, not only with that time period, but also with this like very beloved UK author. Another historical fiction author that I really need to pick up in 2022 is Amor Towles. A Gentleman in Moscow is at the top of my list. list because Moscow. I really love reading books that are set in Russia or Ukraine or anything that has to do with like the Soviet time period, because I am Russian and I have that connection to it. I've heard really good things about this. I know this is a very character-driven story, which I think I like. I'm not entirely sure, but I want to give it a try. I have high hopes for it. The Lincoln Highway just came out. That's his newest release, and I really haven't heard anyone yet review it. I know quite a few people I follow are currently reading it, and so I'll probably see it pop up in some people's November wrap-ups. I know he is a Book Olive's favorite author, particularly Rules of Civility, which I'm actually not entirely sure what that book is about. Again, would love to give him a try, probably A Gentleman in Moscow, and see how I feel. The next author that I would absolutely love to pick up a book from is Isabel Allende. Now, A Long Pedal to the Sea is a book that came out last year, I believe. It was in the top like historical fiction lists on Goodreads, and this one is set during the Spanish Civil War, which I really haven't read much from, so I would love to read from this perspective and a different time period. The next author that I really need to pick up in 2022 is Sue Monk Kidd. Now, I may or may not have read The Secret Life of Bees in high school or middle school. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm gonna say she's a new to me author because I don't remember this book if I did read it. However, this particular book is at the top of my to-read list because I am making another bee book video soon. The other couple books of hers that I own is The Invention of Wings. Don't really know anything about this one. And then a book of hers that came out last year, The Book of Longings. This is a biblical fiction following Jesus's wife, if he had one. And I really haven't heard many people talk about this book either, so I'm curious how this one holds up. The next author that I would love to try is Ariel Lawhon. I've heard amazing things about this author from Lindsay's Little Library. I own Codename Helene, so that's probably the one that I'll be picking up. She also wrote I Was Anastasia, having to do with the lost princess Anastasia. This one is set during World War II and I believe has to do with female spies. I'm realizing I may not be into spy books that much, so I'm not entirely sure how this one will hold up, but I would love to give it a try regardless. Another historical fiction author that I'm very intrigued to pick up is Fiona Davis. I own The Chelsea Girl, so it'll probably be this book. However, I've heard really good things about The Lions of Fifth Avenue, which is a book I believe that came out either this year or last year by her, set in the New York Public Library, which I visited, and it's beautiful, so I would love to read that. This one is set in 1950s New York. Again, I keep saying the same thing. I'm very curious to see how I feel about this book and how I connect with it. And finally, in historical fiction, I would love to pick up Mark Sullivan. I own Beneath the Scarlet Sky and also his most newest release, The Last Green Valley. I would love to pick either one of these up. This one is set in Italy during World War II. This one is set in Ukraine during World War II. Both sound incredible. I'm very excited for either of these. Have high hopes about this one. All right, we're nearing the end. I have one category left, and that is nonfiction, of course. The first author that I need to read a nonfiction book from is Mary Roach. I have Stiff. This is probably her most well-known book. This is one of the first books I hauled since starting BookTube. I have very high hopes that I'm going to enjoy it. This one is all about cadavers and looking at like that part of the medical industry. The most newest release of hers is Fuzz. This one is taking a look at the national parks, I believe, and how nature has intersected with humans and kind of like different stories around that, I believe. I'm not entirely sure, but again, I've heard fantastic things about this author and really just need to read one of her books. She has quite a few other ones that I've also heard really good things about. Out of all the authors mentioned in this video, she's probably closest to the top of the priority list. The next author I have on this list is Jon Krakauer. I own Into Thin Air, so I'll probably be picking this one up. His most popular one is probably Into the Wild, which was later turned into a movie, which I actually watched the movie and that was excellent. Besides this one, I also have Under the Banner of Heaven on my TBR, and that one is taking a look into like a Mormon cult, I believe. Into Thin Air is all about a man who climbed Everest, and I believe he didn't make it afterwards. Again, heard very fantastic things about this nonfiction author. In a very similar vein, I really need to pick up an Erik Larson book. Probably the one that is closer to the top of the list is Dead Weight, The Last Crossing of the Lusitania. Also The Splendid and the Vile. That one is all about the Blitz in London. The Devil in the White City is all about the World Fair and a serial killer who was running rampant during that time. And then in his newest book, In the Garden of Beasts, it's all about an American family that gets stuck in Berlin during World War II. I've heard absolutely fantastic things about this author. Would really love to pick up really any of those. If you've read from him, please let me know which one you've enjoyed and which one would you prioritize out of his books. Two more authors left, the first one being Bill Bryson. I have this book, The Body, checked out from the library. This is a very in-depth look into how our bodies work, but I have heard that Bill Bryson really writes humorously. I think the other one of his books that also is on my TBR is At Home, which is taking a look of living privately and what our homes mean to us. Again, would love to give this author a try. And then finally, the last author that I really hope to read in 2022 is Ben Macintyre. This is The Spy and the Traitor. I've talked about this book in way too many videos. I was supposed to read it this year. I may pick it up in December, but let's be honest, probably not, because I have way too many books that I need to read. Now this one is definitely towards the top of the list. I watched the movie The Courier, which is based on this story, and it was incredible. The other one of his books that piques my interest is Agent Sonia, and he has quite a few other books that are also kind of in the spy and war theme. We'll see when I get to him. That is my very long list of authors that I would love to try to get to in 2022. No promises that I'll read from all of them, but it could happen because I at least just want to try one of their books to see how I connect with the author and their writing and their storytelling. Leave some comments down below. If you've read from any of those authors and you've loved one of their books, tell me which one I should read. And if there are some that maybe you haven't enjoyed, tell me too. I would love to maybe avoid or steer clear or try something else of theirs. Always appreciate the comments and the conversations down below. Thanks so much for watching, for tuning in. Appreciate it, guys. I will see you in another video soon. Bye.